This presentation continues the previous one on artifact evaluation. And here we will look into a process for evaluating artifacts. Here is again the overall process for design research, showing the various activities that take place in a design research project. And here, evaluate artifact is shown as the very final activity in this. But please keep in mind that all these activities are typically carried out iteratively and in parallel even, so this should not be looked upon as a temporal order. Here is the basic question to answer in any evaluation. First, we should look at the problem, primarily the explicated problem, sometimes also the original problem, and determine how well the artifact solves it. We also should look at the defined requirements and investigate how well the artifact actually fulfills these requirements. Here is an overview of the process for evaluating artifacts. First, we should analyze the evaluation context and determine what constraints there are. Then we go on to selecting evaluation goals and evaluation strategies, including research methods. And finally, we carry out the evaluation. The first activity is to analyze the evaluation context. We investigate the environment of the evaluation, we describe it and characterize it. And in particular, we look at various constraints that exist in this environment. And the reason for doing this is that those constraints will have a lot of influence on what is possible to do in the evaluation, what goals are reasonable to set up, and what evaluation strategies that can be selected. The background here is very practical. You will never have all the resources you would like to have when you carry out an evaluation. There are always many constraints in these resources. And these constraints may refer to various aspects. For example, you may only have a few days to carry out the evaluation, while it would be preferable to have many weeks for it. Maybe you have a very small budget, not any special money to use for the evaluation. Maybe you only have 1 or 2 researchers that are able to work on it, not as many as you would like to. Maybe the competence of these researchers is not that high as you also would like to. And sometimes it's difficult to find users and organizations when you would like to carry out a more naturalistic evaluation. You have a limited access to them, and sometimes you have no access at all. And all of these different constraints, they will have a big impact on what is actually possible to do in an evaluation. When you have investigated the evaluation environment and you have identified all the constraints, it's time to address the why and the how of the evaluation. In other words, you select the evaluation goals and you select evaluation strategies, including research methods. Here are the most common evaluation goals again. It's about checking if the artifact solves the problem, fulfills the requirements. It's about comparing the artifact to similar ones, about investigating side effects, and to decide about formative evaluation or summative evaluation. Now, if you had all the resources in the world, it would certainly be great to address all of these evaluation goals. But in practice, you are constrained, so you need to select just a few of them. And it's not only about selecting evaluation goals on a high level, but also to decide about more details. For example, if you go for checking the requirements, maybe you're not able to address all the different requirements, so you need to decide which requirements you should check out. If you go for comparison, then you need to decide which other artifacts you are going to compare with. If you are looking into side effects, then there are many different kinds of side effects. There are environmental or social or psychological or economic ones. So you need to decide which ones of these to investigate further. So selecting evaluation goals is both on the higher level and on a more detailed level. When you have selected your evaluation goals, it's time to select evaluation strategies and research methods. And selecting evaluation strategies, it's about choosing between ex ante or ex post, and choosing between naturalistic or artificial. How to choose is very much dependent on the constraints you have found out about in the analysis of the evaluation context. So, for example, if you have access to users and organizations, then it could be a good idea to go for a naturalistic evaluation. But if you don't have such access, then it might be better to go for an artificial evaluation. This slide also shows different research strategies and methods that can be used in an evaluation. And which research methods to select depends on the selected evaluation strategies. Now, it should be kept in mind that these are only indications. There are also other research strategies and methods, and you can choose in different ways. But for example, if you have chosen a naturalistic and an ex post evaluation, then it is quite common to go for, say, case study or action research. Almost all of the research strategies and methods shown here are ordinary empirical research methods, such as case study or action research or focus group or interview. And there are also a few more formal methods like mathematical proofs or computer simulation. But there is one odd fellow out, namely informed argument. So let's look a bit more at that one. Informed argument. It's about arguments that are provided by the researchers who developed the artifact. They don't investigate empirical, they don't carry out any mathematical or logical proofs. Instead, they evaluate by reasoning and arguing that their artifact actually fulfills the defined requirements and is able to solve the explicated problem. And typically, they do so by starting from the structure of the artifact and the function of the artifact and showing that it fulfills the requirements. And this is done by an argument using ordinary natural language and ordinary reasoning. A big advantage of informed argument is that it is inexpensive. It's very inexpensive because you don't have to carry out any empirical study. It's quite good for formative evaluations because it can be carried out in an early stage of a design research project, and you can through that get some insight for improving your design. However, it's a high risk for false positives. It's very easy for the researchers to be over-optimistic and believe that their artifact is much better than it actually is, and they just provide some arguments for that. Here's an example of an informed argument. The artifact here is a respirator, and a requirement is that it should decrease the amount of viruses and bacteria that are spread from an infected person. In order to carry out an evaluation here. Of course, you could do it empirically, but a simple informed argument could look like this. It just argues from the structure of the respirator, stating that it includes 3 layers of protective material, and some material is also antibacterial, and the respirator includes rubber bands, so it can be firmly attached to the face. And based on those facts about the structure of the artifact, you say that the viruses and bacteria cannot pass through the respirator or between the respirator and the face. When you have selected your evaluation goals and selected your evaluation strategies, as well as research strategies and methods, it is time finally to carry out the evaluation. First, you design the details of the evaluation, and you take many decisions, both small decisions and large ones. Here are just some examples of what needs to be done here. To set up a laboratory environment, to formulate interview questions, book meetings with the respondents, to choose software for data analysis, and tons of other small and large things to do. And then you actually perform your evaluation. If you have chosen interviews as a research method for data collection, you interview the respondents, you take their responses and transcribe them, you analyze those transcribed responses, you draw conclusions, and you do many other things.